consistent with state of California executive orders regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. Zoom is being utilized for this meeting. In case of technical issues, meetings will be uploaded to the city website as soon as possible after the meeting. We will be conducting today's meeting in a virtual setting using Zoom. Committee and staff are participating from remote locations, appropriate social distancing. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting by use of Zoom as noted on the city's website and as noted on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to speak to the CIC may do so during public comment or may comment on agenda items during the discussion of each item and must be logged into Zoom. Anyone using abusive, vulgar, offensive, threatening, or harassing language, personal attacks of any kind, or offensive terms that target specific individuals or groups will be muted and removed from the meeting. Please do not abuse this new way to provide public comment. Welcome, everyone. I will pass it over to Carrie for a roll call.
Thank you. Jerry Glazer.
That would be me.
Alex Goodman. We do not see Alex yet. Dina Allen. Dina, I see you. Are you having tech issues?
We see her. She's here.
Sorry, the sound goes in and out, so I didn't know you were talking to me.
Excellent. Well, that's why we sort of half a roll call, half a mic check. All right. Thanks, Dina. Joshua Somane.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Kenna Lee.
Here.
Lisa Pierce.
Here.
Debbie Burns. Debbie is not going to be here today. Sunali Sikand. I don't see Sunali. Woody Hastings.
Here.
Argus Brent. I do not see Argus. Ambrosia Thompson. I believe she was planning on being here. Everett Fernandez. I do know that he is sick. He was not at the planning commission meeting last night either, so I think he'll probably not be joining us today. Sarah Gurney is a noted absent, and Councilmember Rich.
Present.
Thank you, Diana.
So, Joshua, we're 8 for quorum now, correct?
That is correct. You do have a quorum.
Oh, we do have a quorum.
Good.
I thought we needed 8.
Does Carrie count?
I thought we have 8.
Well, Steve doesn't count.
No, we have 7.
Oh, sorry, Steve. I was counting you. Thank you.
count him in my mind, but yeah.
I think Steve and Carrie both count, but that
Yeah,
isn't
they
what we're
both
talking
count.
about.
At any rate, I don't think we have any decision. Well, I don't know if we need to make an actual decision about the electrification survey. We can talk about that when we get there, but we will move on to our review of action items.
Wait, I'm sorry, review of action items, is that where you're at?
That's
Yes.
where we're at.
Check, okay. Last time, the action items were 1, pay attention to upcoming city council agendas like the 20th, which hopefully we'll hear more about today. 2, working groups start to review the framework appendix, and 3, note about the upcoming report to city council, which I think we'll also talk about today. That's it.
Great, thank you. Steve, as our member of the public, do you have any comments? Yes, you do. All right, bring it on.
Yeah, I want to kind of follow up with something that you brought up last week, Kenna, about adaptation and mitigation. And I guess I want to put my hat in, or my chips on the table for, we really need to focus on mitigation once we get to priorities. Just as a kind of an aside, I did have an opportunity to stop by our cooling center. I'm not sure everybody realized we had one, but there was one set up at the Center for the Arts. I can think there were at least 2 incidents where it was going. And I stopped by both times and found out on the second time, which is probably after the worst heat event of the history of our town, 2 people did use it, which kind of sounds like not a lot of use. Don't know why, if it was organized by the fire department and Center for the Arts closes at 4 o'clock. And that could be part of the issue. Could be there's not as much need as we thought. But, you know, as a committee, we could spend time and try to follow up on something like that. But, you know, we all have to work on what we have time for and what our interests are. So I can honestly say I'm more interested in the mitigation front than trying to follow up with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And just to the point of cooling centers, it's still a pretty new idea for a lot of California communities. You know, not just Sebastopol, but all over California. Communities that generally have temperate weather have not had a lot of use for cooling centers in the past. So the general public health thinking is that this is just a slow ramp up of community education, of people knowing that they're there and learning to use them as needed. And just people don't even perceive yet that how much of a threat heat can be to their health. So we'll see over time. Diana?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that in fact, the cooling centers, times, locations, information were, that information was pushed out to the primary contacts, boots on the ground for our unhoused in Sebastopol. So Adrian Lauby was aware of it, Suzanne Landy, and Tim Miller, of course, and Jennifer Lake, who happens to be the outreach worker who really is in touch with all of our homeless in town. Not to say that those are the only people who would use the cooling center, obviously, but they were aware of it. And by the way, our unhoused count is amazing right now for those who care, since I have a second here, which is that we have a point in time count of 78. 38 of those are what they consider unhoused but sheltered. In other words, we're talking Elderberry Commons. And within the remaining 40 of the unhoused are included those who reside at Horizon Shine, the RV village. So RVs are considered unsheltered. So, but thank you for the comment about the cooling centers.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that update. All right, so do we have any committee members who would like to declare a conflict of interest today? I know this is usually the part of the meeting that gets the most excitement. And we will move on to the planning department report.
Thank you. And thank you, Diana, for sharing that wonderful news about the unhoused. I was actually just reading about the increases in Sonoma County. So it's wonderful to hear that locally we're actually making a difference. Okay, so the planning director report. We did have a couple of items of interest on the September 20th agenda. The council and Diana, I took that night off since I didn't have any agenda items like I normally do, and I my rare Tuesday off. But I did listen to it, so please feel free to fill in on anything that I'm misinterpreting. They did discuss parklets and the potential for making some of the parklets permanent. My understanding is the direction was to try to get the land by the Mimi's parklet given to us by Caltrans so that we have control of that, and then we can do some design on that, and to move forward with working with Caltrans, I believe for the one in front of Retrograde and Sunshine. Is that correct, Diane?
Yeah, so the approval was to approve the development of guidelines, which was a $35,000 budget line item, to pursue a permanent application, an application through Caltrans for the parklet that is in front of Retrograde and Sunshine Cafe. And in terms of the Mimi's parklet, to instead contact Caltrans about the possibility of obtaining complete control of that intersection. And there was some discussion about the parklets and Caltrans limitations. They don't want people, for instance, being served food there. I don't know why. So the final piece was that that there would be an attempt to, that the city staff, probably engineering, would approach Caltrans and make efforts to have the $6,000 per year fee waived or modified.
Okay, and we did also do a tour of Libby Park last night for the Planning Commission with their Park Commission hat on, looked at potential improvements there. And one of the things, which I'm sure we'll have more discussion on in upcoming meetings, that came about was, well, a couple things. One is there a way to improve the water quality of the pond and potentially do some sort of water reclamation thing? That is something, Joshua, I'd love to get as a landscape architect your thoughts on, and we may be bringing that to our design review board meeting as well to see if they have thoughts about that, since we have some a landscape architect on that as well. We also looked at a couple of places. It was interesting. One of the comments from one of the commissioners was that the grass looked really green and should have looked that green in a drought. Well, it turns out it used to look very brown. It's the recent rain that had a lot to do with it. So it was kind of interesting just what 1.5 inch of rain does for you. But otherwise, it was a good meeting. The next meeting on October 11th will be a request from Saves to do a 2-year extension of the RV Village on the north side of town. That will be a temporary use permit public hearing. So that will, if that's of interest, that will be on the October 11th. And then on next Tuesday's city council meeting, let's see, we will have the announcements of upcoming vacancies for the various committees. We have 3 on the design review board, 1 on the planning commission, and 5 on the CAC. And I can just to remind you who those all are. And this is for terms ending December 31st. And you can certainly reapply. This is just how we split up who the 2-year, so that we have about half this year and half next year ending their terms. And then from now on, it will be a 2-year term. So we have Joshua, Woody, Alex, Jerry, and then the second of the vacant youth positions. Those are ones. We also have a climate action committee info update, and kind of after I run through these, I'll let you, if you want to say something about that, go ahead. The annual level of service report by the planning department, which is all of the various metrics of how we're doing. We've included some energy stuff, and I'm happy to pass that report on to those of you who might be interested. And then also consideration of the fossil fuel treaty, non-proliferation treaty. And really that is towards the very end of the meeting. If you want, I can let you know when it's coming up, and we can coordinate that as well. And those are the big items there will be a Saves quarterly report on the RV program as well. Those are the main items for next council meeting.
Thank you so much. We'll talk about the 10-4 CAC update later. Looks like Sunali's here. So I think, Diana, do you have anything to add for City Council?
No, I do not. Carrie has covered it quite aptly. Thank you very much.
All right. So we'll move on to our regular agenda, which I believe, Woody, are you going to be talking about the Prop 30? Oh, Lisa, go ahead.
Sorry, sort of a late ad. One reason the grass might be green at the park there is that the water level there is weirdly high. It's very close to the surface. And that's why Brookhaven, all the foundation had to be a matte foundation, because so it wouldn't float away. It's very high water right there.
I know that for a fact. When I put posts in, I dig a hole, and about 1.5 feet down, water starts showing up.
Yeah, so grass is usually pretty happy.
Yes, thank you. That solves that probably stuff.
All right, so to our regular agenda item A, our Prop 30 report. Transportation brought this forward. Woody, is that you? I thought Alex was going to be.
I can speak to it. I was, if that's okay.
Yeah,
And can I ask a fast question on that? Because you had the handout on that and it had 2 links, but the 2 links gave me the same thing. Was that intended?
no, that was my mistake. I just tried to have something for you guys to do some, so I must have built the links wrong. So sorry.
Yeah, my apologies on that. I actually didn't provide any materials. I've got tons that I could provide. I won't provide you with tons, but I can provide some links and really good information material in follow-up. If that could be shared to all the committee members, that would be great. So should I start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. So yeah, I brought this. So I was, we met, the Transportation Committee met on September 20th, and I was giving a little bit of a legislation summary of where things are at in the legislation, and realized, oh, I should also mention Prop 30, and then we realized, well, we should also mention it in the full committee. So it's just informational, and just figured that it's a super important proposition and should at least have a brief conversation about it prior to the ballots hitting the mailboxes, in just a little over a week. And so I have a lot of background in this because I was in some of the early meetings among Move LA and Spur and other organizations in fall of 2020, when this concept for this proposition emerged. And I really got more interested in sharing information about it because there is misinformation, really a lot of misinformation going around from the no on Prop 30 side. And one of the things that they say is that this proposition originated with Lyft, the ride hailing service Lyft, and that's simply untrue. Lyft has funded the campaign, like 90% of the campaign funding comes from Lyft. And there is a reason they will benefit from it, but there's no special carve out for them. And the proposition itself, I don't know how much folks know about it, but I'll just give a brief outline of what it is. It's a proposition that would tax California households that earn over $2 million a year or more to raise funds. This is a very small pool of Californians. It's 0.2% of the population of the state, about 35,000 people in the state of California. So this is another place where there's sort of misinformation being put out that, we're all going to be taxed. No, it's a very small pool of people who are going to be taxed. And the money that would be raised is roughly $100 billion over 20 years. And 80% of it is earmarked for clean transportation advancement and 20% for wildfire management in the state. Two of the biggest areas where greenhouse gases are sourced, where they're coming from. For the 80% side of the clean vehicle advancement, 45% of that is for the vehicles themselves, subsidies for vehicles, 35% for the charging infrastructure, and over 50% of it is for qualified low-income folks in the state of California. So there's an equity component built right into it to address getting, these cleaner cars into the hands of lower income folks in the state of California. And it also has dollars for heavy duty vehicles, buses, trucks, and so it benefits it benefits schools and whatnot. And then again, 20% for wildfire. There is no special carve out at all for any ride hailing company, not for Lyft or anyone. Only a very small amount would benefit Lyft in any way, and it's not monies that go directly to them. All of the money goes to the state agencies, and it's totally in line with the governor's existing policies. It builds on the monies that have already come out in the state budget for clean vehicles. And so it goes to the California Energy Commission and the Air Resources Board to disperse these monies. And the subsidies would go to, in a very small percent overall to Lyft drivers. And so, the governor has come out in opposition to it, saying that it's a corporate money grab. It's not. No money goes directly to Lyft. Lyft, their interest in it, this is true, that Lyft was required in late 2021 in a ruling to achieve 90% of the vehicles used in their service to be zero emission. That's a mandate that they would need to fulfill. And the way it came down was that Lyft itself, the company, would need to pay for that. No other mechanism existed, so it would be Lyft that would have to pay for that. This is a way for them to get around having to pay for that. And it's where, coming from the earners that are over $2 million a year in the state. And so that's, so the governor is saying that it's a corporate grab. In my view, it's not. There's also California Teachers Association, you might have seen, has opposed it. They are concerned that there would be money that they should be receiving would not accrue to them. There's no impact on monies that come for education. This is an additional 1.75% tax on people that earn 2 million. If I didn't say that at the beginning, 1.75% on folks that earn 2 million or more. And so it's additional, and it goes into a separate fund. Doesn't impact the general fund at all. All of the monies that go to education are still going to go to education. I think those were the main things I wanted to say about it. I think, my personal opinion is it's a yes vote. And I will say the Climate Center has endorsed it, and I'll just stop talking and open it up to questions. Steve?
I wanted to follow up with the CTA, California Teachers Association. Are they opposed to it because they think that it's not going into the general fund and they get a set percent of the general fund? It's dedicated revenue.
Yeah, I mean, there was a proposition back in 1988 that earmarks, certain amounts from the general fund for education. And it's really I think, a disingenuous argument. I think that maybe their argument is that these are monies that could go into the general fund, and they're not. They go into a separate fund. It's additional, and so there's no impact on their existing revenue that they get from the general fund. And if the proposition fails, likewise, there's obviously no impact. I hope that answered it.
Yeah. Thanks.
Kenna, you want me to take questions as I see hands raised, or do you want to
Yes.
shepherd that?
Yeah, you
Okay.
hold the floor.
Other questions? I think I did mention that the Sacramento Supreme Court had, in mid-August actually found that the ballot argument. Oh, I see Diana. Go ahead, Diana.
Yeah, from what corners do you expect objections to this measure?
So the governor, the biggest issue we have right now, biggest problem we have right now is that the governor has come out in opposition to it. And I don't think you need to have to be too cynical to know that the governor has a lot of wealthy friends, and the governor has, and I'm not shy about saying this, I know this is being recorded. We appreciate what the governor has done on a lot of the climate issues, and we appreciate what the budget bills that he signed that have allocated over $10 billion for clean transportation. But we also know it's not enough, and we need to accelerate it. We think that I think that the reason why the governor is opposing this is that he has national ambitions, political ambitions, and he has wealthy donors that really don't like this proposition, and they have his ear. And I think that's really where it's coming from. I think it's a political decision on his part. There have been a couple pieces written on that. And I just, I don't think you need to be too cynical to see that that's what's motivating him to oppose this proposition. It's something that you would think on any other day, it would be a no-brainer for him to support, because it does nothing but support and bolster and strengthen the initiatives, the policies he's already put in place. The Energy Commission and Air Resources Board are implementing. Lisa?
Yeah, I just want to thank you for bringing this up, Woody, and helping me understand where the opposition's coming from. I've been a little puzzled by it, but you're helping make sense out of it all. So I appreciate that.
Thanks. And again, I will follow up. There's the campaign has been scrambling to sort of debunk some of the misinformation that's coming, inaccurate stuff that's been coming out. And so just recently got a hold of some really good pieces that debunk some of the inaccurate information with citations and evidence and all that kind of stuff. Sunali.
Oh, darn it, sorry. Okay, that's better. This goes into the general fund, but it doesn't say that it's being used to reduce emissions. I'm just trying to grasp.
So it doesn't go into the general funds. It goes into a special fund that's only for this purpose. So it's separate and apart from the general fund.
Okay, so who administers that?
And so it will be administered. The money go to the existing state agencies that are managing the state programs on clean vehicles and clean vehicle infrastructure and all that kind of stuff, and to the California Department of Forestry and to the Cal Fire for the wildfire piece. It's 20% of the whole amount.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, I hope that answered it. Other questions on this one?
So just Woody, you're providing this as a general information item so that the committee members and public can have a better understanding when people are asking us. Like, you're not asking for any kind of endorsement or.
That's correct.
What's your ask here?
No, I should have been clear. I mean, I felt that we should have it on our agenda as a discussion item, an informational item. There's certainly, the campaign, the Prop Yes on 30 campaign is seeking endorsements. I think if there were an endorsement involved, it would be the city of Sebastopol, but I'm not asking for that at this point. The first time we're discussing it, it's informational. I think, like so many of these things, you got the time crunch, right? So our next meeting isn't until, after the ballots have hit the street. I don't know that there's time for that. They've already got over 100 endorsements. If anyone feels strongly we should try to scramble and get a City of Sebastopol endorsement, I'd be supportive of that effort. I don't know that that's really all that necessary, though.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Diana?
Diana, and I see Sunali's hand is still up, but let's go with Diana first.
I think Sunali hadn't asked her question.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So my question is, could you really quickly, I was listening, but if you could really quickly go down the percentages. You said 35%.
So the biggest chunk is 45%, and that's for the subsidies for the vehicles themselves.
Okay.
And then 35% is for the infrastructure. And then 20% is for wildfire, addressing wildfire in the state.
Okay. And you said there was an element that helped low income?
Yeah, well, of the, the monies that go to the big chunk there, the 80% that goes toward advancing clean vehicles, over 50% of that is designated for low income. So that would mean sort of the infrastructure at multi-unit family dwellings and that kind of thing, apartment buildings. And then the vehicles for in areas of qualified low-income folks to get the subsidies for them.
Okay, and if the Climate Action Committee concludes that there's a need to bring this before the City Council for some sort of resolution or letter of support, just let me know. I'm happy to try to make that happen, because we got nothing else on the agendas, right, Carrie? Sorry.
All right, Woody, anything else? Anyone else have a question for Woody on this item before we move on? I don't see any more questions. Oh, Joshua.
Yeah, sorry, this is actually a question that I didn't get quickly enough on the City Council section regarding to upcoming vacancies. Hoping that's just a quick one. Is it okay to tack it in?
Sure.
Okay. In terms of upcoming vacancies on committees and whatnot, I've heard information that a portion of the City Council is kind of retiring this round, and so there may be a significant turnover in City Council. Just wanted to fact check the big picture on that right quickly.
Yeah, I'm happy to give a quick, Kenna, you wanted me to give a, okay, quick update is that it is 13 days now until you get your ballots in the mail. There are 3 seats open on the City Council. Sarah Gurney and Una Glass and Patrick Slater are retiring. They're not running again. That means 3 open positions, and there are 5 candidates running. One is Sandra Maurer. The other is Stephen Zollman. And then we have Dennis Colthurst and Jill McLewis and Oliver Dick, who within the community people may know as Oliver Marks, because that's how he is on social media. So those are the 5 candidates. I personally am endorsing Stephen Zollman and Sandy Maurer. There's a lot of signs around town. The election, as we all know, is November 8. It can change because it is 3 of 5, could substantially change the policy making of the City Council. But, differentness is good from my perspective, just saying. And those individuals would be installed at the first December meeting, which, Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's December 6th. So that'll be December 6th, and of importance for this committee, at the second December meeting, the City Council will determine which City Council members are on particular committees, such as the Climate Action Committee. So I would encourage you all to inform yourself about all candidates. The candidate forum I thought was very helpful, and I'll put that in the chat if anyone wants to take a look at it. So that's kind of the nutshell. Did I answer the question that you, okay. And I'm happy to field any additional questions. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So back to our regular agenda. I think we're done with item A, and we'll move on to item B, which is just an informational item about the Marin County electrification efforts. And I believe that will be Lisa or Jerry. Jerry's going to handle that, and I will just give the floor to you, Jerry, for B and C for the survey as well when you're ready to pass on to that. Thank you.
Okay, now I have Lisa talk about the survey. I should say, first of all, that the Marin note came to me by way of Steve, and both of us have read through this. The reason we sent it off to the committee was that one of the things that the energy team has been challenged with, we talk about a REACH code. Well, the REACH code only talks about new buildings. And much of what we need to address is existing buildings. We'll find places like San Diego, which now has an aggressive REACH code, also is now tackling a built environment. In Marin, in this report, was Marin's attempt to do this without changing policy, but making opportunity available. And so they brought specific funds forward to pay for energy upgrades, insulation, whatever else on buildings. And the report is a report of what the results were. It does fit in line with what we're doing with, and Lisa will bring this up with the survey, because in many cases, a lot of the questions they asked during, after, along the way are the kinds of questions we were asking as well. But it's an interesting read, and that's why I suggested that we include it in the packet. And for those of you have time, take a fast look at it. Towards the end of it, there's actually a survey they did of the people who participated, asking them questions about what their experience was and how this changed how they think about things or what they're going to do next. Steve, can you add to that?
No, I think you covered it very well, Jerry. I would agree. Looking at the survey is helpful, and that's it.
The reason for putting it forward is that if we could find funds to do this, or find a way of leveraging an organization that has funds, for instance, Sonoma Clean Power or others, structuring something within our city would be a way for us to start looking at the built environment. I should also mention that, and I did give the 5-minute review last time of the green building tour concept, and that one as well. If we can tie that together with funds, it would be great. In the last few weeks, since our last meeting, I've had multiple other organizations contact me saying we want to participate. The Green Building Council wants to participate. We did talk to, and we'll probably mention this during the report out, talk to Jeff Cyphers again. I wasn't sure whether he thought they would or would not like to. Tanya expressed interest, but said that they're totally booked. And I wrote back to her and I said for RCPA that this really would be a springtime thing, or sometime next year. This could take quite a bit of time to plan something like this out. And our other issue was COVID, but someday we'll actually be face to face again, I hope. Anyway, that was the reason for bringing it forward. Lisa, you want to pick it up from there? And yeah, by the way, any questions on that? Anybody take a look at it?
I read it.
It was pretty impressive, wasn't it, what they were able to achieve?
Yeah, no, it actually looked pretty good.
Yeah.
It wasn't clear. I didn't see in it, maybe I missed it. So it was a 2-year thing. What's the, what are they going to do beyond that?
There was nothing in there that I saw that said this is what we're going to do next. I think the basic idea is much like incentives we give for EVs, and see how many incentives, how many programs, and how much stuff we have to do before there's critical mass and we're moving forward without having to have the incentives. And we're seeing that with EVs right now, with 27% of the new car sales in the Bay Area were electric cars last year. Joshua?
Yeah, just a couple of not particularly important comments. I appreciated you sharing the study. It was interesting to see the history on that, and that it's already been done by another regional county. Seems like that sets a lot of groundwork for trying to do something similar. I noticed that it seemed in large part like they were ending up preaching to the converted, because a lot of the people who were doing the further rebates had already done the solar panels. And so just the challenge of education and broadening the net a little bit. Also, it looked like a lot of people reported difficulty finding contractors who were supportive of it, and so needing to work that angle. And then I just noticed a little bit about the costing there. It was sort of 150 some in subsidies and about 130 or some installations. So, roughly 1,200 per of subsidies, and then whatever costs for the programming that weren't, sort of disclosed there. And I think at a certain point, if we're implementing something like that on a smaller scale for a town, some of that cost benefit analysis would just have to come into the planning. So.
Yeah, that's right. There's a couple of things to look at. And one is that I don't know if you got to the appendices. The appendices break a lot of that out in a little more detail, including the comments from people as to were they aware before they started and were they not. You're right. Their target was, how do I outreach and reach out to people who might participate? And their assumption was there was a lot of synergy for those who had solar panels already. And you're right about the preaching required. But if you look at the survey, in many cases, probably about 50% of the people hadn't done anything before. And I don't know how they found them. So that's actually one of the challenges, finding people. That's the other reason for the Green Building Tour. Doing a fun thing, talking to other people. So you're introduced to things that you've never seen before and say, oh yeah, I could do that too. And that's the kind of thing. But then I think the funds do need to be there. The last thing that you said has, you guys know I participated in a number of other things, the MTC and recently now with SETA. The repeating story is one that Steve and I have discussed before. And I talked to contractor friends as well. Finding contractors who are qualified, not just that, finding contractors who want to do the work has been really difficult. And I actually had a meeting with PG&E this week as well. And they talked about that being one of the problems that they have. So yeah, that's part of the reason for the tour, quite frankly, is to bring some of the contractors forward. So people say, oh, there are contractors, and then other contractors seeing these contractors saying, oh yeah, well, maybe there's business here for us. All right, Lisa, you got it.
All right. So I did just want to add a couple of little things that the survey, I guess, could be considered kind of out of date by now. You know, things are changing so fast. And I don't think I, for one, am eager to do anything nearly this ambitious for a survey. This was a huge project that they undertook. And I'm kind of seeing the survey more as a way to, an excuse to stop people on, you know, at the farmers market and other events, and engage them in this issue, and maybe help them become aware of things that they may not have been aware of before. So anyway, let's see. So we did do a couple of, well, a few little changes to the survey. And I think that the suggestions that we got were incorporated for the most part. Steve, did you want to go over that at all?
I don't think I really need to show the document. I think that really what people did suggest, we did incorporate it, with the exception, I think, Kenna, you talked about doing a prioritized list of what you may be interested in swapping out or putting in new equipment. And we thought that was just a little too confusing for people, and we made it more of a checkbox. And I do want to follow up with Woody's suggestion, where
I just want to make a comment on that one real fast, Steve. And kind of, even though it was a little confusing for them, more so if they answered it, we weren't sure what we would do with the differentiation. And it was better to know what they were interested in as opposed to what they're most interested in. And if they were interested in 5 things, then we can look at that.
And wanted to put out a thank you for Woody to the suggestion to contact Sonoma Clean Power and the Building Decarbonization Coalition. We contact both of them, and we talked with Brant Arthur, and he said it looks very interesting, and they would love to include the results in our series of community needs assessments that we will be launching. We're currently negotiating scope for this with several consultants. And one of those assessments will focus on residential energy use. And then from the Building Decarbonization Coalition, they also really liked the survey. They had a suggestion to include energy efficiency in one of our, let's see, it was number 8. I guess that's the one. What are you looking at doing? I think, unfortunately, energy efficiency is one of those things that most people, their eyes glaze over and they have no idea what you're talking about. And they also sent us a document where they had done focus groups and individual interviews with people who have had the equipment installed, with installers and government officials and they asked a variety of questions, and it was very informative. And I feel like our survey could add to that information. I think we can get some hopeful coordination between Sonoma Clean Power, the Building Decarbonization Coalition, and us. I'm not saying they're going to give us any money or anything like that. Nobody's saying anything in terms of that kind of help, but results will get looked at, I think, by those two groups at a minimum.
Yeah, Joshua?
Yeah, thanks again for putting this together and taking the edits. I like the questions and the level of information. I think it's really good, digestible. Just one suggestion, there's a few questions, specifically sort of 8, 9, 10, that I think are kind of like identifying and qualifying questions. For instance, do you rent or own your home? And I would just think that are you a homeowner would come sort of earlier, kind of in the first set of questions, in the kind of, have you heard about this before? Do you rent your own? Do you live here? And then sort of, are you considering any changes? So the ones that were the meat of it, in terms of how are you replacing appliances? Have you run into any difficulties? Would you like any help? I think of those as kind of the summary and kind of the ones that we're most interested in. But for some people, if they're not a homeowner, that might be almost a deal breaker or something that changes the nature of their answers to all the rest of the questions. So I just suggest that those kind of framing the situation questions maybe bump up a little earlier in the survey.
Great, good suggestion. Thanks, Joshua. Jerry?
One of the things I just want to point out is I'm looking forward not just to the results, because if we start looking at a green building tour as well, finding out what people are most interested in, we'll try to find those sites which would support the things they want to investigate as well. So that's important. And Joshua, you brought up something which is really important. And I've been in a number of forums now and still trying to figure out how to deal with it. With 50% of our population across the Bay Area rents. And so there's a difference between those who have the cost and those who have the value. And the ones who have the value are the ones who live in the facility, and those who have the cost are the ones that own it. In the case of a homeowner, it's one and the same, but otherwise that's not the case. A lot of cases, we spent a lot of time talking about the survey because we wanted to get the input from those who don't own as well, because we want to use that also as part of the argument of, let's see how we can get those upgrades done. And is it worth, can you find a way as an owner who's renting, as a landlord, of making this profitable to you as well? So it's one of the challenges in a number of forms.
Yeah, that's a really tough needle to thread so far. Yeah, I just wanted to come back really briefly to something Jerry touched on, which is that there aren't very many contractors who are interested in pursuing the training. Sonoma Clean Power has been offering training and heat pump installation for quite some time, and I believe they might even be free for contractors, and they've had hardly any signups. I think there's only one contractor right now who's BayREN qualified in Sebastopol for doing heat pump water heaters and stuff. So that's a big problem. And
I have to chime in on that. Yeah, sorry, Dan. I chime in on that because the contractor who did the ADU and did the upgrade on my house is upgrading his house. I had to rag on him for 2 solid months before he finally broke down and started putting insulation on the outside of his house. Because, he done it for me because I said, you have to do it. But that's not what they usually do. And finally he said, okay, right, you were right. Okay, it's going to work well. But it takes a bit to get there.
Diana?
Yeah, thanks. Maybe this was explained, but looking at this survey, what's the plan for rolling it out? Is this a Google survey? What's the idea here?
Well, we have some thoughts on that. There have been various city-sponsored surveys in the past, like were for bicycle trails and various things like that. So Steve or Jerry, do you want to talk about that some more?
I think that will be our main venue, similar to what was done on the bicycle survey done, what, 2 or 3 months ago?
Yeah.
And that was posted on the city's website and publicized. So in addition to that, we'll be doing in-person survey, at least the farmers market and hopefully some other venues. And we can coordinate with the education committee and see what interest there is in the committee to help out with that effort.
Yeah, there's just not that many in-person venues that we have these days. And the newsletter gets to a lot of citizens, and then following the link down, that would be the primary way to get the input.
Okay, and Carrie, have you been in the loop on this plan in terms of getting this particular survey funneled through the city system?
Yeah, I did contact Holly just in terms of what the costs were and what the process was for a general survey. And she did give me numbers. I believe I forward those to you, Lisa, and Jerry too. Yeah, good. And if the CAC folks are willing to do some number crunching, the actual kind of data analysis, which I'm assuming you'd kind of want to do anyway, because you're going to be interested in the data, it's a lot less. If Holly's all she's doing is getting the survey out there and getting the responses in electronic format and then passing them on. I can look up what that was, but it was 1,500 or 2,000 or something like that.
I think the number you sent was $2,000.
Thank you.
Yeah, Diana, one of the things I'm going to point out, and I know I'm being an asshole about this, the form that we've been filling out when we pass things up to the committee, we took the time to fill out the form, and then we sent this form to staff for staff to put their input in, and they did. And so asking the question, have they been in the loop? We're hoping that everybody from every task force does it the same way, fills out the form, sends it to staff, and then they're always in the loop. And the only time they won't be in the loop is when they decide to stay home.
Well, I'm glad that you are so optimistic about all of us. That's awesome. So, Carrie, is this a topic? Is this an item that will need some sort of city council approval for funding, or can it be covered by the planning department?
So you might recall a certain council member on the budget committee pushed and got, I think it was $5,000 for climate action committee initiatives that were not yet identified. And so if the committee directs and chooses to, we can use this towards that.
Okay, so the committee would need to understand that you have a $5,000 kitty there, and this would be a reduction in that amount of money, but the budget makes it available, just for this fiscal year. So better to spend it on a useful item. Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a fast question?
Yes, please.
This is agendized. Can we have a motion to?
I was going to say, does someone want to introduce a motion to move this forward to approval from council?
Go for it, Jerry.
Well, you just stated it, and I just made that motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right. Is there any further discussion from committee members or from our member of the public, our intrepid member of the public?
I wasn't sure if we were going to maybe decide on moving that question up higher, like Joshua suggested, if maybe that's getting too much in the weeds.
I think
it's a good idea.
I'm happy to leave that to your discretion.
Okay.
As far as you're concerned, you guys are the experts on the survey, so I'm not going to quibble.
So I know, Dina, you weren't able to come to our last meeting. And like I said before, Dina was really an instigator in this and did a lot of the work. So I'm just wondering if you had anything to add, Dina.
No, I just like to instigate.
All right. So
fair enough. All right.
Do we have a vote or?
Yeah, I'm going to call for a vote if we're done with discussion, does anybody have any other points of discussion? All right. So all in favor of moving this recommendation of the survey forward to city council, raise your hand and raise your virtual hand, please. I think that's what helps carry the most. Look how good we are, Gary.
Thank you. Excellent. That is unanimous.
Awesome. All right, you can lower your hands now. We will move on. So we have a decent amount of time, which is nice. I do want to leave some time at the end for Joshua to discuss the work plan meeting and for myself to get input on the council presentation. And Sunali, is your hand still up on purpose? Speak now.
While we're waiting, I just want to say thank you.
Oh yeah, no, thank you guys for bringing that forward and doing all the work and taking it back and doing the revisions, etc. So it's very exciting to move that forward. So we will move on to working group reports. I was expecting a report from Zero Waste, but it looks like none of their members made it. So are there other working groups that have reports today? Joshua.
Yeah, just a reminder that we're having a compost event this Saturday, 9 to noon are the posted hours. If anybody is able to stop by for a bit and help us manage sort of traffic, pretty much is what it comes down to, getting the cars, to kind of line up with the pile and load and stuff like that. That would be great. We can always use a hand. Thanks.
All right, anything else from sequestration before we move on? All right, so Jerry, go ahead.
Energy. We had a meeting. And we actually met with Jeff Cypress, Lisa, and Steve. We invited a member of PG&E, another person working on community energy on the Eco Block, Terry Taylor from Windsor, working on energy, neighborhood energy, and Anne, and I just lost Anne's last name, from Petaluma, who's on the energy team down there. So we picked up as much as we can, and we'll continue to.
And Edminster?
Yes, that's right. Thank you. And I should know her name by now because we have like a dozen emails back and forth because we're working on we're interested in the green building tour as well. What we talked about, and the topic was neighborhood energy. We spent about an hour or so discussing it. The push from me, at least, was for us to develop, get a table where the different players were sitting together talking about what do we need to do in order to have neighborhood energy, community energy. And Jeff did something great. I have a full report out because our PG&E person who's responsible for microgrids at PG&E wasn't able to fit it into her schedule. So she asked to meet with us this week. And so I had an outline of the things that Jeff talked about, the discussion that we had. He actually interrupted us and said, "What's important to you?" Which is a great question. And we spent a good amount of time talking about what was important to each one of us and what needs to be done. We're still looking to figure out how we move forward on this because this is much bigger than Sebastopol. And when I talked both with Jeff, we talked with Jeff, and I talked later with Andrea, one of the major problems has to do with the tariffs, because Jeff's comment was this comment. The regulatory agencies are designing tariffs to solve the problems we had 5 years ago. They need to be designing tariffs to solve the problems that we're going to have 5 years from now. And he said, now, how do we convince them to do that? And he said, we should all be contacting the regulatory agencies talking about that. The FLAC on NEM 3, which solves some problems for PG&E, but doesn't really move us in the right direction in all of its pieces. There is in the Climate Center, I have to say, the Climate Center probably nailed this at one point in time. Barry's initiative, I think it was called ACE, talked about that the grid will look different and that we'll have distributed energy. And that means neighborhood energy has to become predominant. A lot of people think of that for resilience, but more than anything, it has to do with the fact that, and again, Jeff brought this up, the grid that we have today can't handle what we need to be done. And he pointed out that in Humboldt County, they are not allowed to add any more solar panels or any more EVs because the transmission lines to get to Humboldt County are too small. Then they can handle the power, but for the safety regulations PG&E put in place now in order to make sure that there aren't fires, the wires are now too small. So they have to run new lines, and they're working on doing that. But for now, they can't grow. Now, if they had community energy, they could be collecting the energy there, storing the energy there, and supplementing. The other thing that Jeff brought up, and this is something this is really difficult to think about, and I spent time with Andrea and Kate talking about it. He said, we need to be doing workplace charging for our cars. And he actually told what they did at Sonoma Clean Power. He has a charge station at every parking space. At the beginning of the year, 3 employees came in with their electric cars. By the end of the year, 32 employees were coming in with their electric cars out of 40 employees. His point was, and also, by the way, they only charge, he has the charge stations turn on only when the grid is predominantly green, is carbon free. He said between midnight and 6 in the morning, it's not carbon free. We're using carbon, and that's our low time. A lot of us charge our cars now. We should be charging our cars during the day when we have the solar, we have the wind. And so that's part of what they've been doing. His challenge with that is now he has to 1099 all his employees because there's a federal statute that says if you give free fuel to your employees, you have to 1099 them for the value of the fuel that you gave them. So he can't just give it as a benefit. And he said, he also pointed out and said, well, if you're gonna have a reach code, you should have a reach code that says workplaces must have charge stations for all their employees. And that was part of what he pushed. There's a number of points they made. They were great points. I don't know where things go from here. And that's one of the issues I'd like to hear what Steve and Lisa have to say about that. But when I spoke with Andrea, we started talking about who do we get to champion some of this, to bring the players to the table. Employers, SCP, Sonoma Clean Power, PG&E, and us consumers. And that's the only way we're going to start to get the changes that we need. Anyway, I think he was frustrated too. So it was a great meeting. I mean, he felt good about it, and we felt good about it. Steve, they said you have more to add.
Well, I was just going to add that adding those chargers to the employee parking lot was amazingly cheap. It was, there wasn't any kind of credit card use or anything like that. They weren't super fast chargers, and they were able to install them for pennies on the dollar. So that was actually really inspiring.
Yeah, I'm just pointing out, years ago, I attended a conference down in Tulare, of all places, with PG&E, Southern California Edison, and all of the companies that made charge stations. And the companies that made charge stations said the single largest volume that they had was for 110 charge stations for companies, because they don't even need 220, because everybody's there for 8 hours. So what the heck? You're only going 40 miles, plug in.
Mm-hmm. Steve?
I just wanted to add that if we start thinking about Sebastopol in that regard, who's our largest employer, it's the high school. I think that's probably, it used to be the hospital, but probably now it's the high school. In the county, it's probably healthcare and county government itself.
Yeah, they're already working on that workplace charging same model at the county administration center in Santa Rosa, which they're building a new parking lot there. And Annalee has all those chargers, and it would be a fantastic project as a perk for teachers.
You mean solar, right?
Yeah. Solar. One of Jeff's points also was, if we want to get the tariffs changed, and we want this to occur, he said, we actually need to get the private employers, Kaiser, Google, to influence the state and the regulatory. Even PG&E said the same thing. They said they get more done. Actually, Andrea said, we got a project done because Google told the regulatory agencies they needed it done. And she said it was done in a few months. If they did it from PG&E, it would take a year or years.
Gary?
Yeah, just in terms of the conversation, possible sites in Sebastopol, I did want to mention that that Dante has been working on, and this isn't quite the same, but it's potential leasing to Sonoma Clean Power of 3 sites for large-scale solar array. I don't think this would translate to, I mean, it's more of what Sonoma Clean Power is doing, but those sites are, one's the community center, one is one's a parking lot, I forget, and one is the public works yard, which has really good exposure as well for daylight.
But the key thing that Jeff brought up was the solar is great, but what we really need is storage. And so we need to pair all of that with storage.
All right, thank you. Is that our full report out from energy? Yeah, okay. Anyone else? Do we have anything from education outreach this week? Dina, Sonali, shaking your heads. Okay. What about transportation? Anything besides the Prop 30 update that you brought forward earlier?
We talked about a lot of stuff. We're still working on trying to bring something forward related to bicycles. We're not there yet. And the only other thing I'll mention is that this Friday is the final deadline for the governor to sign or veto bills. So I am going to provide for that subcommittee a final assessment of all the bills that were enacted. And so, I might do a briefing on that if folks are interested for a future meeting, just on the sort of climate related bills and transportation related bills, if there's interest.
Thank you. Yes, Jerry.
There's no place else on the agenda to bring this up, so it's about transportation. On Monday, I attended as a member of the Citizens Advisory Committee to the Sonoma County Transit Authority. And the reason was, it was Zano. Zano said, Jerry, did you know that the North Bay Electric Auto Association has a seat on on that committee? And we didn't know, and they were about to drop us off. And so I asked Sonia if somebody should go, and she said, you should go. So I had to read the 300 pages worth of material before I showed up. There's some very interesting things happening in transportation. Woody's going to fill in for me because I'm going to be in Europe during the next meeting. So he'll have to read the 300 pages. But most of this has to do with Measure M and guiding the Measure N spends. What I did hear were some very interesting things. Petaluma Transit, Santa Rosa, and the county transit all reported in. They all said by the end of 2024, they'll have 45% of their buses will be electric. And we were also talking, because I've seen there's a lot more money showing up now for transit. So we're going to get more frequent buses. I also complained because I tried to get from Sebastopol to San Francisco for a 1:30 in the afternoon meeting on Wednesday. And I just need to leave from Sebastopol at 7 p.m. the night before, which included some walking in Santa Rosa. And the Santa Rosa rep, city bus, said, we'll figure that out because we do have a bus to do that. So she's going to start looking at some of those things. But it was an interesting meeting to go to see what's happening and where the money's being spent. There's just so little money that's actually earmarked for us. I was surprised. It's something like for Sebastopol, there's a total out of hundreds of millions of dollars of $127,000 for Sebastopol. By the way, Sarah Gurney is our representative on the committee, not the citizens portion, but the board. So I don't know who's going to take that place.
Yeah.
And Jerry, if you do ever need someone, I can represent the electric things if you're at the, if it's the members and partners meeting, I can always sit in for you if you need as well. since
Oh,
I
that'd be
usually attend
great.
those
Okay,
meetings.
great. But Woody's actually a member of the North Bay Electric Auto Association. So
That's better
why-
because all I got is an electric bicycle right now.
Dina?
Well, with all those electric buses coming, there's a bunch of storage, right, Jerry?
That whole concept of tours, I have not dropped it. And I've been trying to find other people working on this. And that is something to bring up. Yeah, there's a tremendous amount of storage. I also did talk to Brian. I just lost Brian's last name too. He's the director of Sonoma Transit Authority, the county. Or Sonoma Transit. I wanted to know why he wasn't putting depots in different places. He's actually going to keep one depot in town. And it is a lot of storage, but the problem is they burn the power during the hours predominantly that we want to be storing it. And that's actually the challenge. So with the buses, in the case of the school one, Tor nailed it. Schools, they run in the morning, they run in the afternoon, and in the middle of the day, they're sitting nice and quietly. They could be pumping energy into the buses in the middle of the day. And so that's an ideal application. And I actually was responsible for the deployment of the first electric school bus in the state of California through the CHP. It didn't run all that well, but it did get certified. And there's several now. So I'm hoping we can push Tor's idea forward. It's finding the right people. And if folks on the committee know people at the school board, that's the place to start. And plus working with the bus company that supports the schools.
All right, this is all exciting. There's so much thinking going on. And then in the chat, we have a big party plan going. So if you're not reading the chat, you're left out of the party. So any other working groups that want to bring forward anything this meeting? Otherwise, we'll move on to chair reports and have Joshua talk a little bit about the work plan meeting that will be coming up soon.
You might call this the working plan for the work plan.
Yeah.
And I want to work with you all to double check the plan so we can plan for planning the working plan. Anyhow, what we're currently thinking, and this is the time to offer suggestions or raise concerns, is that we will have a meeting, that the second meeting in October, which is to say October 26th, that we will devote the agenda of that meeting exclusively to formulating our work plan for the following year or 6 months or whatever we choose to take on with respect to the planning of the work plan. We will have some time so as a reminder, already working groups should be starting to sift through the framework appendix and think about which agenda, possible tasks or items within that framework we would like to advance within the next year or so, how to prioritize those based on your topical interests and expertise. We will have Phoebe back in next week or so, and she can start interfacing between the working groups and Carrie with respect to refining those notions and getting them in some sense of order. And we'll learn more about how to make an official work plan and how that has been done with respect to other committees in the town. We can have a time to check in about the work plan development process at the first meeting in October, which is to say our next meeting in 2 weeks on the 12th. And then again, the idea is that the second meeting in October would be all about work planning. We are thinking that that meeting would maybe need to be a little bit longer. So more like the 2.5 hour range than the 1.5 hour range. We are interested in the notion of perhaps having it in person somewhere, a bit of indoor, outdoor, or some partial indoor masks or something like that, and potentially having a little food break in the middle of it so we could have a first phase and then take a break and then kind of go back into it. So that is the idea at the moment of how we might approach doing the work plan. So just wanted to have a little bit of a survey here and see if that sounds good to people. If there's folks who have objections or concerns about any of those aspects, want to offer suggestions for different ways to set it up. So just trying to look ahead. Yes, Lisa.
I think that all sounds really good. I wonder if possibly the that community room in the library might be available as a, the weather might be good or it might not be good at that date.
Yep, hard to know. Carrie, was that one of the ones that was sort of on your list of possible options?
It certainly could be. The one I was thinking of was at the youth annex. They have a side room that's fairly big. And then if it is nice, there's a possibility of doing things outdoors as well.
Okay, that sounds great.
But if that's not available, then yeah, the library's a good backup.
That sounds even better.
Okay. And Carrie, just to circle back on something that you had mentioned earlier, we may have some leeway in this setting about public attendance and or
oh yes, so yes, I can tell you the rules, and it's interesting because this pattern of doing most of our meetings via Zoom, but you are allowed to have in-person meetings. The design review board just had a tour, and the planning commission just had a tour last night of Libby Park as their actual meeting. So the rules for that are, it's not required to record or webcast meetings. Every committee that we have in the city does at times have visioning workshops or retreats or things like that, where I know I've had that with the public art committee and the planning commission, where they're not recorded. It does help people speak a little more freely when they're talking about the future of the committee and things like that. It is, so again, it's not required. So I would, and it's also difficult for staff to be recording, and they end up being pretty poor. I know when we had to do the public art committees, it's a camera set in, a very old camera set in back, just recording. So we can do that if there's a desire for a record. Generally the facilitation and the results are the record for that meeting, and that goes into the minutes. But otherwise, we just need to post an agenda. You still need to have a formal noticed agenda 72 hours ahead of time, date, location, and meeting. And then it's consistent with the Brown Act. And then any action that's just like you now doing.
Great. So to summarize, if I may, we would have some leeway in having this not necessarily be a fully live public meeting. Members of the public who are parts of working groups would be welcome to be invited within the context of the working group to participate in that formulation process if you choose. But it would essentially be a committee focused meeting where we're trying to come together a work plan, and hopefully by the end of it, we would have at least a solid draft work plan that can then become our record of what we accomplished at the meeting.
Correct. And then the public can attend. Anyone who's not, anyone from the public can attend. And if they're not part of a working group, then they would just be observing.
Okay. So the public is allowed to show up, but they are not necessarily entitled to participate in the formulation.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And that's how we've done all the other things. And usually the public does not come to those meetings because that's a little bit more sausage making than they want to see.
Okay, great. Just to confirm right quick, is there anybody here who would object to the notion of one in-person, slightly longer meeting for this purpose of work plan? So that sound doable for all of us so far? Okay, great. Do please, if you have a chance, spread the word to other folks who are not here, if you have contact with them or in working group meetings or whatever that might be. But as of now, we'll sort of proceed with that plan and keep you all posted. But yeah, the intention is that we'll hit that essentially a month from this meeting.
Joshua, do you want to just send out an email to everyone?
Yeah, I could do that. Just send an email out to the group list. Got it.
And this is regarding October 26th, correct?
Yes, that is.
Okay, thank you.
I thought you said the 28th. Okay, 26th. All right.
All right, thank you so much. So we're 8 minutes from 5, and I'm hoping to get some input. As usual, I have this idea that I'm going to have my council presentation and show it to you guys and have your input. And as usual, I didn't do that. So I would love input about what we want to get on there for next Tuesday's meeting. And I will be fact checking in with different working groups to make sure that I'm saying what you want me to say. Diana, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to, the meeting for the planning work plan, that Wednesday would be October 26th. Woody, is that the date you were looking at, or are you thinking about Friday, October 28th? I want to make sure I get it correct on my calendar.
Wait, are you asking Woody a question?
Well, no, I'm asking anyone who can answer it a question, and it's probably to Joshua, who was talking about the work plan meeting. Is it on Wednesday, October 26th?
The idea is that it is during our regularly scheduled committee meeting time. So it's following the regular committee meeting schedule. We might talk about beginning slightly earlier. I would imagine, maybe 3 rather than 3:30, just to be able to extend it a little bit, and right. That we can announce next time around.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you. And I'll answer anyway and say, yeah, that would work for me.
Okay, good. Excellent. So if anybody has anything now that they want to speak up that they want to make sure gets included in the presentation to City Council, some of what we'll be doing is thanking them because this will be our last presentation to the current council, and the council as it's now constituted had a lot to do with the formation of this committee and the adoption of the climate action framework. But obviously, we also like to give them just ideas of what's coming down the pike. So I'll be trying to summarize the different projects that are coming, including the electrification survey, and just give them, kind of an idea of what to expect. So I'll be checking in with each of the working groups before next Tuesday. And now we'd like to get, does anybody want to speak up right now and say, please don't forget to say XYZ? All right, sounds good. Oh yeah, Steve?
I just wanted to mention that you'll probably have a lot of the candidates who are tuning into the meeting, and it's an opportunity to also push the seats that are on the Sonoma Clean Power Board and the Sonoma County Transportation Authority. And we want people to really start thinking about that. In particular, those are the 2 biggies that impact us. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Sonali? What?
In the comments.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, that's amazing. Well, Dina's event, the Mend and Befriend on Friday. Bring your projects, bring your things, bring a Christmas project, a gift project, anything at the Grange. 4:30? No, wait, what time?
I think Dina's going to tell us.
Dina.
Well, that's not what I was going to say.
Okay.
Yeah, at the Grange between 4:30 and 6:30, we sit around people from in their 20s to their 80s, mending whatever, helping each other, having a good time. So all are welcome. What I was going to say, Kenna, for your presentation, I know you've already talked about compost, but I have a fresh picture if you want to see if it looks any different.
Yeah, thank you.
And just, I think it's worth mentioning that our 2 fall giveaways, and our plan is to do 2 spring giveaways. And they're still very popular.
Great. Thank you.
And I just wanted to add that Mend and Befriend is really fun. A lot of people there, and it's really a great event.
Awesome. Okay, so anybody have anything they would like added to our next agenda? So looking out forward, we have 2 meetings in October, One of them is going to be the work plan meeting. So anything that you'd like discussed in our regular agenda would need to be on next meeting's agenda. And Jerry, what would you like us to discuss?
I'm still waiting for staff to return with the input from the proposal that Steve and I sent in, Energy sent in on reach code, which really isn't a reach code, but does talk about structuring our code and eliminating some things which shouldn't be there anymore, like the solar elements. And we didn't push for anything other than what Steve Brown's actually doing. We'd like to see it actually in our code, and with the intention of restructuring our code over time. That is, we wouldn't change everything to start with, but we would make those chapters available and then start putting things in them when it's appropriate. It gives a place for the committee basically to say, hey, we need to have this, and then have the council say, yeah, let's have this ordinance, and then we know the right place for it to go to.
So would you like us to agendize that? And then
I would like you to agendize it. You know, basically we filled out the form, the paperwork, we were waiting for staff's input to be written there and saying, this is what we think the cost would be, or we would recommend doing this and not doing that, as Steve did in our meeting, so that what the council will see will be exactly what we vote on.
okay. And you're going to work with Carrie to move that forward?
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Once again, anyone else have anything that they'd like to see on the agenda for next meeting, which I think is October 12th? Joshua.
This is sort of a question for Carrie and sort of a suggestion, and it's on the work planning front. That Carrie, I know that you've been through a fair amount of process with the Planning Commission about how they all put together a work plan. I wonder if it might be reasonable, appropriate, if you could just give us a brief kind of informational overview of sort of what you expect from a work plan on the city's end, and if maybe we could do that at the next meeting. Is that reasonable?
I think that would be excellent. Yeah, and that way SVB gets started meeting with you folks.
Great.
Yeah, perfect.
All right.
And Carrie, you could bring in an example of what you do with the Planning Commission, which would be a good way to see
I
the
will,
structure.
because council literally just adopted the updated work plan at one of the 2 meetings ago. So it's fresh.
Fresh work plans. Okay, we're at 5 o'clock. Unless someone starts waving their arms very quickly. Joshua, you just unmuted. Okay. We will adjourn this meeting until a regular committee meeting of October. Wait.
Thank you.
I'm supposed to do a review of action items. That's why.
Oh, yes, review of action items. Sorry, thank
Last
you.
little thing on the bottom.
I
I'll
was
be
just
brief.
moving ahead.
Not a whole lot. Just a reminder for those whose initial terms of service on the council or on the commission or committee, we are a committee, is ending this year, which, as I see it, as I understood, is Woody, Alex, Jerry, and myself. We're just sort of asking that folks get clear on whether they want to reapply, and if they think that they might not want to reapply, think about trying to line somebody else up who might want to come in, because we can always use new blood and fresh insight, and also really appreciate people's experience and engagement. I myself thought I was bailing out for a bit for professional development, but I feel like got some good momentum, and there's still some of my favorite subjects we haven't gotten to. So I will be renewing for another round with you all, or as many of you all as would like to be there. All right, we did approve advancing the survey to the city council for review. So that's kind of back to the energy folks to go ahead and move that along. I am going to be sending an email to all of you, including the folks who are not here today, just about that intent for the work plan meeting. And anybody is welcome to send items to Kenna for inclusion in the city council report next week. Thank you.
And I'm going to beg that all of you reapply, please.
Yes. I'm going
And I just put
tonight to start your pottery for your reapplication reward.
I was gonna say, if you are reapplying and you want your old application, just let me know and I can email it to you, so you can use that as a basis.
Let's just send it all to all of them as a prompt and nudge. All right, thank you all.